Michael, if you read the article, I mean, they brought many examples from Dish, from Deutsche Telekom, from Vodafone. It looks like a failure to deliver what was promised. For instance, they brought the example of Dish, and also they talked about the strategy of some operators to go for a hybrid cloud or even for a private cloud for the mission critical workload. How do you see this, the report and these kind of tactics?
I think I think today the spectrum of adoption is quite wide. I mean, look, you have both ends. And again, look, let's try to focus on the pure telco workloads. I will put aside OSS, BSS, ERP, IT, which well, ERP is enterprise, but I mean, OSS and BSS are considered telco workloads, but there's huge adoption of moving OSS and BSS into public clouds. For the sake of answering that question, I will just focus on core, radio, and so on. Now, there is a very wide spectrum of opinions and adoptions that you can see even among the ones that are mentioned in the article. Dish Networks, for example, is one that said from day one, we don't want to own our infrastructure. We are going cloud, right? And they even said we want to adopt a multi-cloud strategy. They ended up with AWS only, but in the beginning, they settled on VMware as an abstraction layer to be able to port their workloads from AWS to Azure to Google Cloud or whatever it is. In the end, they got the best deal out of AWS. But as of today, Dish is still end-to-end cloud. I don't think they have their own data centers. They're using different types of deployments from AWS, whether it's centralized, near edge, far edge, etc., etc. Even their Open RAN is deployed on AWS Outpost. So it is an end-to-end public cloud deployment in Dish. Now, what allowed Dish to do this is a friendly regulatory environment in the United States that allows them to do this. They don't have the regulatory restrictions, the data sovereignty concerns, etc., right? Now, I'm not saying that this is without challenges, but they set a strategy, the regulatory framework, and also the presence and the ubiquity of AWS in the US regionally and nationwide enabled them to do this. And I remember meeting the Dish CTO a year before they launched, and they said, this is our strategy, this is what we will do. And the vendors that are not on board with our strategy will not be considered in our bidding or RFP processes. Basically, any vendor that comes in and says, I am on board with your strategy, I will deploy on public cloud, and I will be cloud native and will adopt cloud native tool chains and tool sets, they're in. If they are not, then you find on the complete other end of the spectrum, for example, in Japan, Rakuten, that still started as a cloud native telco, but they said from day one, we don't believe that public clouds are ready to host our workloads, and we will build our own private cloud, which funnily enough today they are trying to position and sell as a public cloud to other telcos to adopt, right? So these are two ends of the spectrum, and then there is a lot in between, right? So I think the recent announcement, for example, from Etisalat of adopting Azure for their packet core, it's a hybrid cloud stack with on-prem workloads, but completely managed from the public cloud as a management plane. So you get all the automation, let's say the hassle-free management of the infrastructure or the cloud stack, but you still have the full control on your applications and workloads, minimized latency, and so on. So I think the spectrum is very wide. Deutsche Telekom, for example, is focused on public cloud partnerships around B2B. So they believe that they are able to put B2B workloads, even, for example, 5G in a box for a private network on a public cloud, but they don't want to put their own commercial or consumer core in a public cloud. So again, also, if you go back to the US, AT&T did the same by moving everything to Azure. Verizon said, no, core will always stay in our private cloud. So I think there is no right or wrong answer, but it's just I think the title of the article is meant to be more like clickbait rather than reality, because as you said, it's a process. We're going through it, and I don't think we will end up. Look, even in the enterprise world where cloud is nobody's debating anymore the viability of cloud in the enterprise, there are still industry sectors that are resistant because of many reasons, whether it's government for regulatory and data sovereignty reasons, or is it financial sector, for example, for other, I mean, you name it. But even in enterprise, public cloud adoption is not 100%, and we will never, in my opinion, we will never reach that. There will always be a place for private clouds in the market, and hybrid cloud, of course. But I think we are going through the same in telco. But because telco as an industry is heavily regulated everywhere, it's considered mission critical, not only for its own operations, but for the operations of every other industry and so on. The progress will be much slower.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Michael. And I like the title of that. We do have a wide spectrum of tactics, and I think we can measure the success with actually our capability to deliver like business use cases, to bring the revenues, expected revenues. It's not just about the technology stack. So